How dare low-life prosecutor, deranged Jack Smith, that's right, he's deranged, break into my former Twitter account without informing me and indeed trying to completely hide this atrocity from me. What could he possibly find out that is not already known? Just like the early morning raid of Mar-a-Lago. Why isn't the DOJ raiding crooked Joe Biden's house? Why aren't they raiding his phones? He's the most corrupt and incompetent president in the history of the United States.
He's taunting him, gang. The Trumpinator is taunting Jack Smith and bumbling Biden because he knows, first and foremost, Jack Smith has no case. And now it appears official. Wait until you see the latest on the DC case against Trump. You'll see precisely why Trump is already taking some much-deserved victory laps, and not just when it comes to Jack Smith's implosion, but also Biden's collapse as well. They're calling Biden's polling disaster a 5-alarm fire. This is the legacy lamestream media saying this. DC is in panic mode today, gang. I'm going to show you exactly why.
But first, gang, our good friend Mike Lindell needs your help. Mike is one of the strongest patriots working tirelessly for the America First and MAGA movements in this country, and also happens to be a very close friend to this channel, as you know. From election integrity to protecting American businesses, Mike really does it all. And now, as the cabal of deep state lawyers and election machine companies are trying to take Mike down with frivolous lawsuits, he needs your support more than ever. Mike recently said he was going to fight every lawsuit until he wins and will never settle out of court with people who help rig the election. So, with this in mind, I want to remind you about the incredible MyPillow deals Mike is offering with my promo code Turley. Now, if you just click on the link in my description below, you can save well over 60% on all sorts of incredible MyPillow products. Of course, Mike is offering huge savings on the new and improved MyPillow 2.0. But gang, I would also recommend hugely Mike's My Slippers, as well as his amazingly comfortable bed sheets. These are some of the comfiest slippers and sheets I've ever owned. In fact, I would use that word to describe all of MyPillow's products. Comfy to the maximum. So don't wait, gang. Support Mike as he fights for election integrity and gets some extremely comfy things to boot. It's a win-win. Don't wait. Click on that link below or go to mypillow.com/Turley right now.
Let's dive right in here. It is now being widely reported that the trial for President Trump in D.C., the trial that was supposed to convict Trump first and foremost of trying to overturn an election by virtue of his involvement with January 6th, that trial has now been completely dropped from the D.C. court's public calendar of scheduled trials. So if you go to the D.C. federal court's calendar for scheduled trials, on into throughout the year, Jack Smith's case against President Trump, his sham case against President Trump, not only has been removed from the originally scheduled March 4th trial date, it's been removed from the calendar entirely. There is no Trump trial scheduled at all in D.C. It's gone. It's been wiped clean from the DC court schedule. It's literally as if it never existed. In other words, technically speaking, the DC case against Trump has been postponed indefinitely. Now, there's a very interesting behind-the-scenes development in all of this. Florida Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who's wonderful, she just tweeted out that she and her Republican colleagues of several days back sent a letter to Jack Smith, this rogue prosecutor, weaponizing the law in order to blatantly interfere in the 2024 election. And they demanded that he produce information for precisely how he has conducted the sham indictment legally, legitimately, such as how on earth does he have jurisdiction to assemble a grand jury in Florida, right? In the case of Trump's handling of classified documents, that he was just gloating about there, as you can see, or his authority to offer immunity, all this technical legal stuff. But they were noticing that Smith is doing all kinds of shenanigans behind the scenes that they're like, wait a minute now. This is not legal. This is not legitimate. You show us your authority here. So they sent him that letter and they gave him 9 days to respond to that congressional inquiry. And Anna Paulina Luna just posted that literally within hours after the congressional inquiry, hours after her office sent Jack Smith the letter requiring him to produce requested information regarding his investigation, the case against Trump disappeared. It got removed from the D.C. court docket, which means that Jack Smith has got even more explaining to do, not less. But as we speak, and again, I kid you not, as we speak, this rogue DC prosecutor, Jack Smith, for all practical purposes, is basically in hiding. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. The case has been removed from the docket, and Jack Smith he's gone ghost. He's basically hiding from this congressional inquiry. So something is up here, gang. Something smells quite rotten in Denmark, or in DC, better. Now, this, of course, all started with Jack Smith jumping the shark several weeks back. That's when we knew he was starting to get very, very desperate in all of this, in this weaponized lawfare that's trying to deliberately interfere with the 2024 election. As you know, a few weeks back, Smith filed a desperate appeal to the Supreme Court where he bypassed, and this is really unprecedented, he bypassed all lower appellate courts. Instead, he went straight to the Supreme Court, imploring the Supremes to make a special ruling, an expedited ruling, on whether President Trump can claim immunity from criminal charges for actions taken as president. Now, the reason why he did this is because Jack Smith's sole job here, as you know, is to interfere with the 2024 elections. He is both the Democrats and establishment Republicans, the uniparty's weapon to weaponize lawfare so as to interfere with the democratic integrity of an election, the 2024 election. That is Jack Smith. Right now, that is his sole reason for existence. His sole reason for existence is election interference. And that interference requires that Trump be convicted by a corrupt DC court of a felony before the November elections. Again, you have to keep in mind, originally they thought just the indictments themselves would be enough. Remember that. They thought the corrupt Manhattan DA, the Bragg's indictments would be enough. They thought the DC indictments would be enough. They thought the Mar-a-Lago indictments would be enough. They just thought that was it. That's all you needed. You didn't need any more than that. Fulton County, which is, of course, the Georgia Fulton County case, is absolutely falling apart. I mean, my heavens, Fannie Willis is the one that may end up in prison. That's the hilarious part. She's going to get impeached, or at least resign at some point. She with her boy toy scandal that's going on there. But they thought the indictments themselves would be enough to hurt Trump. They didn't. They had the opposite effect, right? They boomeranged. They backlash. Trump's polls only went up. So now they needed felony charges. They needed convictions. And the only way that they're going to get those convictions before the November elections is if the court stuck with the original March 4th trial date. So remember, it's this DC trial that was slated to be the first trial that would be the beginning of taking Trump down before the November elections, right? They picked March 4th deliberately. You know what March 4th is, right? It's the day before Super Tuesday. The trial was picked deliberately, politically, to take Trump off the campaign trail the day before the single most freaking important election day in the primaries. I mean, brazen doesn't even begin to describe these legally weaponized tactics. It's so pathetically, blatantly obvious what they're doing. This is a deliberate interference in an actual presidential election. I mean, this would make Kim Jong-un blush. He'd be like, guys, no, wait. I mean, at least banana republics try to pass off their weaponized legalism as legit. But regardless, the problem for Jack Smith to keep the sham trial date of March 4th was that Trump's attorneys filed brilliant, lengthy, well thought out motions reasoning that the Constitution, the doctrine of presidential immunity, required dismissal of this entire case. Now, of course, the radical leftist Marxist judge in this case, this DC case, Judge Chutkin, she, of course, denied each one of those motions. And so back on December 7th, Trump's legal team began the appeal process, right? Appealing Chutkin's denials to higher courts, the appellate courts. And that's precisely the problem for Jack Smith and his number one reason for existing, or his sole reason for existing on planet Earth right now. And that is to disrupt the democratic integrity of a presidential election. As long as these motions are going through the appellate process, the case against Trump is effectively stalled. There's nothing either Smith or Chutkin can do against Trump. And the appellate process could take months, going way beyond the November elections. And we can't have that, right? You can't. This whole sham trial has been scripted by the Rhino and Democrat establishment to get Trump convicted before the election. That's the script. That's what election interference is all about, making sure these things happen before election day. And so Jack Smith, in an act of total desperation, decided to file a motion directly to the Supreme Court, completely bypassing the lengthy appellate process. He wanted the Supreme Court to rule on Trump's immunity. Forget all the appellate courts. Supreme Court, tell us what you think. Now, he thought, obviously, that they would strike it down. But what's so hilarious is in this motion that he filed, he tried to convince the Supreme Court that they needed to rule right now. Smith demanded the Supreme Court rule right now, this current court session. It's imperative that you hand down a decision immediately. It has to be done before this session of the Supreme Court ends. Now, why on earth was it so important that this case be settled within this Supreme Court term as opposed to another term? Why is this term so important? Jack Smith never effing explains. He never even remotely gives any semblance of justification for why this decision had to be made now. He simply demanded it. He demanded that the court decide this issue before the current session is up, but never explains or justifies legally why such a speedy decision is necessary. And that's because we all know why. That's because even the Supreme Court knows why. It's because Jack Smith needs them to help him interfere in the 2024 election. It's because Jack Smith has been tasked by the Biden Justice Department to blatantly interfere in an election that the Democrats are going to get crushed in. With the legacy media's help, of course. The legacy media cheering him on all the way. Yeah, go Jack Smith. You're wonderful. Love you. Well, the Supremes obviously weren't convinced. Smith's motion to expedite the review of Trump's claim to immunity from prosecution was indeed shot down by the court. The Supreme Court saw through this. They saw how Smith was blatantly politicizing the legal system. They see how he's desperately and deliberately trying to usurp the appellate process, and they weren't buying it. They didn't give Smith the time of day. So the Supremes decided that Trump's immunity claim has to go through the lengthy so arduously lengthy appellate process, which of course will most likely extend the trial way beyond the November election. And so it's been nearly 2 months now since Trump's sham criminal proceedings got paused in DC. And now the huge development is not only that the March 4th date, the day before Super Tuesday, has not only has that been scrubbed from the calendar, that's officially no longer happening. We knew that, by the way. We knew Jack Smith got his weaponized March 4th date scrubbed right in front of his pathetic face. We knew he would get this date scrubbed right off, totally off the calendar, right in front of his pathetic face. We knew that was going to happen. But now, I mean, the icing on the cake here, gang. Now, the case against Trump itself has been scrubbed from the calendar. It's gone. It's disappeared from the DC court docket. There is, as we speak, there is no trial for Trump scheduled in DC. Now, of course, that can change as things develop. But for the time being, the trial has been delayed indefinitely. And Jack Smith is hiding to boot. He's hiding from the congressional inquiry, which I'm sure is only going to end up inquiring all the more. It's only going to end up heating up after all of this. And it gets worse. It gets worse. This indefinite postponement is not the single worst news that bumbling Biden and his Democrat cohorts could have possibly gotten today. It actually gets worse for them. And it's the legacy media that's breaking this incredibly horrific news.